Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. Today we'll analyze two important topics: Iranian oil import by India despite US sanctions and SEZ policy. But first up, the topic of Iranian oil import. Indian companies will continue to buy Iranian oil despite the looming US sanctions on that country. Indian Oil Corporation Limited and Mangalore Refinery and Petrochemicals have contracted 1.25 million tons of oil from Iran. Iran is India's third largest oil supplier. US President Donald Trump in May withdrew from the 2015 nuclear accord, reimposing economic sanctions against the Persian Gulf nation. And for more on this, I'm joined by Mr. KP Fabian, former diplomat, and also by Mr. K.A. Badarinath, editor policy, Financial Chronicle. Welcome to Rajya television, gentlemen. Mr. Fabian, let me begin by asking you that Oil Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has said that India has its own energy needs and government will be guided by national interest. What do you make of this statement?
I think it's a correct statement, and I believe that it is in our national interest to import oil from Iran. As you mentioned, despite US sanctions, well, these sanctions to an extent are already there. What the United States has said is that by 4th of November, they will be fully in place. So we have our national interest. We need oil from Iran. It is not only a question of oil. We have a deeper relationship with Iran, not only civilizational, geopolitical, of contemporary importance. You know Chabahar?
Right, sir.
Our access to Afghanistan, Pakistan won't let us, unfortunately. So our access to Afghanistan, rest of Central Asia, and also don't forget the famous international North-South Transport Corridor, which was signed in 2002 by Iran, Russia, and India. So we have a lot in stake. So we are doing the right thing. As regards United States sanctions, they are good friends. We should tell them these are the reasons. Not that we want to be difficult with you, but we need it. And we don't have to seek waivers. If they want to give, we can look at them. So let's have a waiver policy. Let's imagine a policy which is freer and a world where sanctions do not apply, because sanctions are bad in themselves. Mm-hmm. They don't change policy. Yes. They only make people suffer. As in Iraq, 500,000 children died because of US sanctions applied through an obedient Security Council. So let's look at sanctions very carefully and critically with a certain awareness of what it has done in the past.
Mr. Badarinath, now US sanctions would come into effect from 4th of November. That may block payment routes. What could be an alternative viable option?
Two things are there. When the sanctions on Iran were there earlier, we did not recognize the unilateral decision of US, which does not have the backing of the United Nations. Now we don't need to do it either. Secondly, if the sanctions on India finally become operative in November, well, they do not mean anything in a completely changed world. This is a fact, a reality which the Trump administration needs to recognize much earlier, and in its own interest as well, that in Asia, India is one of the most dependable partners that US has vis-a-vis the geopolitical situation that is slowly changing all over. So, from the oil point of view, my guess is that there shouldn't be a problem, in the sense that even earlier, in the earlier sanctions, the oil imports were exempted. But this time round, if finally the sanctions happen, they would like to stop us from purchasing oil from Iran, which is not an option before India at all. And Iran has been a fast friend for India in the Persian Gulf, and we would not like to cut off our relationships, which has been nursed over ages. And he has been there during the revolution, Mr. Fabian. So my guess is that we should not make too much out of the US sanctions that are coming in. With regards to the payments problem that is likely to come up, once the sanctions take effect in November, two things can happen. One, when the earlier sanctions, the entire payment gateways by Europe, US, everything was stopped. They did not allow us to make payments to Iran via the payment gateway systems, which are basically routed through either New York or London or any of the European destinations. But we still had a barter arrangement. Means, one, you can pay in rupees and they would accept rupees as a currency for the export, oil export that they have been making for ages. Secondly, in lieu of oil, we used to export a lot of commodities like rice, wheat, everything, so many other things. And even today, we have to pay about $5.5 billion. Only last month, I guess, we have cleared $1 billion before the sanctions have come into effect. India has been a fast friend with the United States. And in such a scenario, there's no point in alienating India from the point is we just had 2+2 kind of a dialogue.
Yes.
And now you want to go with the sanctions. This is unacceptable. And no respectable country would even honor such a thing. Leave alone any of the small banana republics. India is no banana republic, I'm sorry.
Right. Mr. Fabian, Washington has said that it may consider waivers on embargo, but those waivers would be time-barred. Now, what kind of impact would those waivers have in India?
I personally think that seeking waivers is dangerous because what it means is that, from time to time, the President or the Secretary of State has to certify that India is progressively reducing its imports and what India is doing is in accordance with US national interests. So in other words, it's a Damocles sword hanging over our head. There is no point in asking for it. Now talking about sanctions, I entirely agree. What do you mean by US sanctions on India? If they apply sanctions to defense purchases by India, it will be sanctions on Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics, not on India. And you can calculate how many thousands of jobs are involved. And don't forget, President Donald Trump is the most enthusiastic salesperson for the military-industrial complex, military-industrial congressional complex of the United States. He will never do it. So I entirely agree. This is something we don't have to worry much about it. But as I said, since America is, we have good relations, we should explain it, but discreetly, diplomatically, so that we have a conversation, they understand. And once they understand, they will behave. But our constantly seeking the sanctions or giving the impression we are seeking the sanctions through the media and otherwise, no, that is injurious to us. And don't forget, India is a growing power. We have certain, we have to look after our interests and take decisions.
That's right.
As I said, we can't please everyone. We have to first please ourselves, our people who are paying such high prices at the pump. Now, if we had gotten an arrangement with Iran based on what I was telling my good friend, deep discounts and CIF delivery.
Yes.
If we had got into that arrangement, maybe we are still getting into it, I hope so, then you and I would not have been paying such high prices at the pump.
Right. He mentioned about CINF. Now, any specific challenge that you foresee in transportation of oil, because we transport oil from Iran on cost insurance and freight basis?
Even in the past, we have not bothered about the sanction. Under Sir 301 rule and others, they had attempted sanctions on India. Even then, we did not. When the Pokhran blast happened, they tried to put economic sanctions on India, slapped. But then we never even batted an eyelid. Yes, seeking sanctions may not be the honorable way. But my guess is there's no harm in explaining our position to the Republican administration at a very clear, polite, diplomatic terms. This should be the policy that the Modi government has to go ahead with. I guess that is what Madam Sushma Swaraj is trying to do, number one. Number two, in terms of the CAF issue that you're talking about, well, the deep discount that Iran has been offering to us, and with the insurance coverage, and giving us oil at the ports of call in India is a big advantage for us. Secondly, when the trade between Iran and India is happening in non-dollar terms, it reminds me, mind you, even China has entered into a large contract with Russia for supply of oil in non-dollar trade. If they can do non-dollar trade, why can't India do the trade disregarding the dollars?
Mr. Fabian, diplomatically, defense deal with Russia and now buying Iranian oil despite the sanctions. Is it an assertion of India's strategic autonomy?
Yes, and also what is interesting is that in the case of that S-400 system, I was very pleased to see a clear statement by the Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman weeks before the 2+2. She said it in plain English. We have made it clear to our good American friends that we have decided to go ahead with that purchase because we need it.
Right.
Now, that sort of clarity of statement, timing, in diplomacy, signaling is very important, and timing. That is what we require. I don't know whether we did that in the case of oil from Iran, because earlier statements were made, oh, we can do without it, we can get it from Saudi Arabia, Latin America, and all that. Anyway, doesn't matter. What is important is that the government has taken the correct decision, and this is in national interest, and this will have, universal support. And other countries are watching. European Union, which is now sort of trying to build up a special vehicle for payment system.
Yes.
And they have told us that they will be happy to work with us. So not only the rupee, but also the other arrangement.
When these sanctions become operative, what kind of impact would it have on the global oil market?
It depends. If through the Straits of Hormuz, Iran is not able to send even a tanker, then I'm afraid that things will get worse, because Iranians had hinted, that look, we have the Straits of Hormuz and it is meant for trade, and if we cannot send even a barrel, as they put it, well, they might do something to the passage through the Straits of Hormuz, in which case oil prices will go up. And there will be, United States might do something, or Israel might do something, and the whole thing will go up in flames. That, let's hope, will not happen. And on the other hand, my view now, I could be wrong, is that India will continue to buy, China will continue to buy, and India and China are the
biggest oil importers. Yes.
And European Union also will continue to buy if that special arrangement works out. So Iran exports might come down, but they will not cease. And as you said, the world will realize that American sanctions do not always work. And one more point. It is true that we speak of multipolarity, but in the world of international financial transfers, we have unipolarity if you believe in SWIFT and other mechanisms. So we need to overcome that. We need a truly multipolar world that includes the financial sector also.
So your comments on the impact on the global oil market?
Global oil prices, my guess is already they are, very high, because they have almost touched $90 per barrel. But there have been, years when the global prices have gone up to 130. But here, since the oil demand continues to be there, number one. Number two, the major importers like China and India will continue to buy from Iran. My guess is it will be very little impact or very moderate impact on the prices as such.
On that note, Mr. Fabian, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Badarinath, please stay on with us for the next segment as well. So the government has clarified that national interest is of paramount importance. Time for a short break. On the other side, the SEZ policy. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch. Now we'll analyze the SEZ policy. The government has set up a committee to examine the Special Economic Zone policy. The committee has suggested continuation of SOPs and a host of other steps to revive SEZs. SEZs were set up to provide a hassle-free environment for exports and to replicate China's success of SEZs to boost manufacturing and employment. And for more on this, I'm joined by Dr. L.B. Singhal, Zonal Development Commissioner, Northern India SEZs, and also by Mr. K.A. Badarinath, Editor Policy, Financial Chronicle. Welcome to Sabha Television, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Let me begin by asking you, sir, what are the challenges staring the SEZs in India, and how can a comprehensive policy like this address those challenges?
Yeah, before we understand the challenges, we need to understand how the SEZs have done in the country. You see, India was the first country in the Asia to start with this scheme. We started with the Export Processing Zone scheme, and we set up first one in the Kandla in 1965. Between 1965 to the year 2000, we operated this as a EPZ scheme. But our exports in the year 2000, that was just around $2 billion, 8,000 crore. That was the time when we started that we need to change. We changed it to the SEZ scheme. We incorporated it as a part of the foreign trade policy. And from 2000 to 2005, our exports went up from $2 billion to $5 billion. Then we enacted SEZ Act in 2005. We made it operational in 2006. But see the progress from that point of time. $5 billion in 2005. Last year we had $90 billion. Employment that point of time was 1,43,000. Today we have the direct employment of around 20 lakh people, and indirect is almost 3 times of that number. In investment we had around 4,000 crore rupees, 4,300 crore rupees to be precise in 2005. Last year we had the investment of 4,74,000 crore rupees till now. So that is the kind of performance it has done. But now we have to understand what are the challenges. You see, from 2005 to 2012, SEZs did extremely well. Exports from the SEZs in 2005, which was $5 billion, went up to $87 billion in 2011-12. But from that point of time onwards, last year it has just done $90 billion. So 5 to 87 in 6 years and 87 to 90 in just 6 years time. What is the reason? We need to understand that, and then we arrive at the solutions. When we have the interaction with the exporters, the most important thing which they say is that we applied MAT, Minimum Alternative Tax in 2011. And from then onwards, the journey which was progressing, it has halted. At that point of time, when we had to put our foot on the pedal, on the accelerator, we probably put it on the brake. So now when we are understanding what needs to be done, probably number one thing is that we have to provide a package which is quite comprehensive and competitive to the package provided anywhere else in the world. Keeping in mind that aspect only, Government of India in the last 4 years have done number of things, number of steps have been taken.
Yes.
And similarly, present government constituted Baba Kalyani committee only. If you see in the last 3-4 years, the government have the benefit which was available in the foreign trade policy, like MEIS benefit, SEIS benefit, which was available to the domestic exporter, that has been extended to the SEZ. It was not available there. For effective utilization of the area in the SEZ, dual use in the SEZs have been permitted. And similarly, for taking this SEZ scheme to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, specifically in the IT sector, the minimum area requirement, which was 1 lakh square meter built up, for the tier 2 city, it has been done 50,000. For the tier 3, it has been done 25,000. So we need to take these steps further, and we need to carry it forward.
Mr. Badarinath, this committee has suggested seamless transition of special economic zones to economic enclaves. Now, how can the government ensure this kind of transition?
First and foremost, this is the recommendation, key recommendation that was made by, if I remember, the panel headed by Baba Kalyani.
Yes.
But I have a different opinion on this.
Please go ahead, sir.
in the sense that, trying to de-link export from SEZs is not the right way to do at all. Because SEZs were given all kinds of concessions only based on the commitment that exports will be the primacy of these zones. Otherwise, there is no reason why prime land should be given. There is no reason why special fiscal dispensation has to be given and all that. Even earlier, when the SEZ policy was coming in, the idea of bringing in economic conclaves or economic zones was considered by the then government, but then they opted for SEZs, the smaller ones, unlike the large economic zones that were tried out in China. Here we have smaller, compact, export 100% export oriented SEZs. So if you want to de-link exports from SEZs, this is not a workable idea at all.
Dr. Singhal, he is raising valid concerns. So how can this policy cater to the interest of exporters in the present economic scenario?
You see, number one is that Baba Kalyani committee report that has just been submitted.
Yes.
So it will have to be examined what are the issues, and the government would have naturally the interministerial consultations, yes, and then they will take a view on that. As far as export part is concerned, you see, when a person is going in the international market, then even as per the agreement on subsidy and countervailing measures, the exporter is entitled for exemptions from the on the taxes, on the indirect taxes regarding the inputs. So what if he's exporting in the international market, he has got to be provided exemption from indirect taxes in a seamless manner, in a manner which is absolutely hassle-free. And in any case, in case he's selling in the domestic market, there's no revenue implication because the goods which are being sold from the SEZ to domestic market, that is on payment of full duty. So whatever benefits were derived, that benefits is get only for getting into the international market. When he sell in the domestic market, in any case, he pays the duties on that. As far as what further could be done?
Yes.
Number one is that, you see, one of the things which is being considered is that the SEZ need to be integrated with the economic corridors. That be mutual complementary to each other. Why? Because you see, when the SEZ developer is there, it provides infrastructure within the SEZ, but the external infrastructure is still an issue. So when it is there in the economic corridor, then the external infrastructure component is taken care of that. So both the schemes can be mutually complementary to each other and could be really beneficial to these things. 2-3 other issues have been coming up. One is that when the SEZ units are selling the goods in the domestic market, as on today, they have to make payment, full payment of duty on the finished product which they are removing. What they are saying is that if a domestic importer, he imports from a country in which we have entered into FTA, he is able to import it on zero payment of duty. Whereas I am taking from the SEZ, then I have to pay full duty on the finished product. SEZ encourages manufacturing in the country. It encourages value addition in the country. Yes. It leads to integration with the domestic economy. The employment outside is almost 3 times of what is created in the SEZ because of the SEZ activities. So what could be done? One of the suggestions could be that when they are selling the goods in the domestic market, then they should be asked to pay duty which is foregone on the inputs used. If I am making shirt, as on today, if I am selling the shirt in the domestic market, I have to pay duty which is applicable on the shirt. Instead of that, for making shirt, if I have imported fabric, I have imported thread, I have imported button, then whatever is duty foregone on these inputs, the unit should be asked to pay duty on these things.
Mr. Badarinath, yes, you wanted to pitch in. Yes.
I have a completely different opinion.
Please go ahead, sir.
Over the years, the kind of tax concessions that have been given to SEZs is huge. The kind of revenue sacrifices the country's people have done is very huge. Concomitant benefit to the economy has not been there. My guess is the early the enthusiasm that was there in the development of SEZs has worn out. So we need to rediscover SEZs. I have no problem with that. But at what terms? Why should we at all give them any concession in terms of don't de-link exports at all? The exports is your primary business. You are not being set up for catering to domestic tariff areas at all. Sorry. Only in between the domestic tariff areas business has been included. Why do you want to become a regular manufacturer for Indian markets? And this is not the theme with which SEZs have been made.
But there's also a very important factor, which is of the WTO. How can this policy be in line with the WTO norms?
See, when the SEZ policy was there, then itself it was made in such a way that we are not going against any of the statutes of the WTO. Even today, SEZ policy is not against the tenets of WTO. What is it? If there are some disputes, always it can be referred to the dispute settlement mechanism, which is anyway there. And many of our trading partners, including US, has taken us to, even on the domestic tariff issues, they have taken us to
Exactly.
the dispute settlement mechanism. So,
Right.
what
That was
is
the concern,
issue?
sir.
I don't think they should be. First, my big objection is they should not dealing themselves from 100% exports. And secondly, if it has to be done, then it has to be done at a cost. Otherwise, they have no business to get into the domestic tariff area at all.
Right. You wanted to pitch in, sir?
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that even today, when we say SEZs exports, is not 100% exports. The requirement even as on today is that a unit has to be a positive net foreign exchange earning. Positive net foreign exchange earning means your export value has got to be more than import value. So long as a unit is able to achieve this one, they can also sell in the domestic tariff area, and that is on payment of full duty. So when even the present committee, they are not at all saying that it should not be for export. Is saying is that, all right, yes, exports should also be there. For the exports, even as per you mentioned about the WTO, they say that you are entitled for your exemption on the inputs, so that should be provided for. And when you are selling in the domestic market, then you have to pay duty. What should be the mechanism? How it could be simplified? It could be worked out. Okay. So point is that how do we take it further forward? No one is saying that export is not to be done. Export continues to remain priority of the SEZ. But simultaneously, in case you are being asked to sell in the domestic market on payment of full duty, that works a little bit hindrance to the SEZ manufacturer. You also have to understand one thing, that it becomes absolutely impossible for any unit in the SEZ to export their 100% production. What happens in case he is able to export 90% and 10% production is there? Should he simply keep on storing that in the inventory? So outlet has got to be provided, and that is the situation almost the SEZ operating elsewhere in the world as well. I stated in the beginning that your package has got to be comprehensive, it has got to be competitive, it has got to be comparatively better than the operating procedure elsewhere. Otherwise, why would any investor will come to India?
Dr. Singhal, there's another very important suggestion, and that is of the infrastructure status. How important is that status for the revival of SEZs?
Extremely important. Extremely, because what happens is that SEZ, if you see the objective of the SEZ which are given in section 5 of the SEZ Act, one of the SEZ objective is creation of infrastructure in addition to increasing exports, employment and investment. And for enabling that to happen, in the SEZ Act it has been provided that when you create the infrastructure, then you get duty-free inputs for creating that infrastructure as well. But the finance is an issue. Once a status of infrastructure is bestowed on the SEZs, then the funding becomes that much more available. So that is a very important component.
I'll give you last words, sir, last comments. How can the SEZ Act be made more robust?
My guess is they should try and concentrate more on the external markets rather than trying to get into the domestic tariff areas. Number one. Number two, try and realign the existing SEZ policy to make them more vibrant or more kicking, and see that they try and compete in the global markets rather than trying to get into the Indian markets.
On that note, thank you so much for those inputs.
Thank you.
So there's a renewed focus on SEZs. With that, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.